Prisoners have few rights when they're placed behind bars, in most cases not even allowed to attend a funeral of a parent. And why should they? They've committed a crime and they have to pay their debt. But what rights are there for someone wanted on criminal charges to attend his father's funeral without threat of being apprehended by police? This idea of sanctuary is no longer in law. In fact, New Zealand never had such a law. QC Grant Illingworth.
The decline of the ecclesiastical courts to the point where basically all legal issues are run by the state and not the church, that took place a long time ago. It really is a relic from the past.
But this relic has been raised as a new issue by a Christchurch priest who believes sanctuary needs to be respected and upheld both privately and publicly. News media recently reported a case where the police staked out a funeral of Tala Saleni, who was found dead after an apparent murder-suicide. His son Tussie, wanted on charges of a serious nature, was being pursued by the authorities and was prevented from attending his father's funeral due to the police presence at both the church service and the cemetery. Reports of armed offenders pulling over mourners' vehicles at gunpoint and hiding in trees at the cemetery have caused Father John Rizzo, the Catholic minister presiding over the church ceremony, to call the police presence tactless.
These policemen, they just wanted to come in, do their duty, no matter what the circumstances, no matter what the consequences. And again, it just shows the world in which we live, too secular, okay, too separated from a respect for the things that are holy. They should place themselves in the shoes of this son. You know, wouldn't they want to be present at their own father's funeral? In a statement issued to Endzone Focus, the police maintain they were discreet in their presence at the event because Mr. Saleni's son, Tasa Saleni, was wanted on serious charges. Arrangements for how officers would be there were discussed and agreed with the family's Presbyterian minister at Hornby Police Station prior to the event. These arrangements were welcomed by the family. On the day, the nearest officers at St. Paul's Church were in plain clothes and located at least 400 metres away. The nearest armed defenders squad officers and dog handlers were located several blocks away and well out of sight. Police stress they were not in the church or in the grounds at St. Paul's Church. This is disputed by Father Rizzo. When I did arrive, I could tell there was a quote-unquote a discreet police presence. They were in the car park, 3 of them, and they were waiting obviously for the individual to show up. They apparently came into the church, other family members were telling me, just before the service, and then they left. They were probably like doing a layout, you know, staking out exits and entrances and so forth. So later, when this news report came out, I did get a call from the police inspector, and I simply said to him there was no need for any police presence. I said we were all safe and sound. Yes, so the individual was a fugitive from justice, but he would have shown up simply to pay respects and to farewell his father.
Father Rizzo says he understood Tussie, the son, planned to turn himself in after the ceremony.
It's my understanding from the family that he did have a deal going with the police, that he would turn himself in the day after the funeral, but the police claim no such deal was made.
It comes down to a question of the police having a discretion to carry out their duty and exercising that discretion. Sometimes they might get it wrong. Sometimes they might make a mistake, and like everybody, they hopefully will learn from any mistakes that they may have made. But I don't think it's a situation where we can afford to go back to what is really ancient history and say that the churches should be places where the law doesn't run.
Historian Peter Lynham, who studies the historical church and has many books on the subject, suggests there is a place for sanctuary and the right of a church to protect its members, criminal or otherwise.
Well, imagine if we were in a state which was coercive against Christianity, and there are states like this, as you know. And in those contexts where the power, you know, the legal right to share one's faith is not permitted, and you could cite a whole series of human rights abuses in Afghanistan, right down to Egypt, then what you find is that really, I think Christians need to recreate the solidarity of saying that we are one community. In the end, strong minorities can protect the right of their members.
The right for a person to hold a religious faith is protected under the New Zealand Bill of Rights, and the issue of sanctuary, although no longer a legal issue, comes down to one of respect for the religious communities involved.
Sometimes there can be a clash between what the police are required to do under their legal duties and the religious beliefs and freedoms that people believe they're entitled to exercise. Those clashes are very rare in the community. They don't happen very often at all. But when they do, I think we're entitled to expect that the police will think very carefully about doing things that could be offensive to the religious communities that they're interacting with at that particular time.
There's always two sides to this. There's the very strong law and order case that argues that the law should go everywhere to get the criminal. And on the other side, there's the case that says that you should respect people in their private contexts.
Peter Linen believes the idea of sanctuary is deeper than the four walls of a church building.
If there's sacredness, it lies in God and in all people, because they can respond to God. So it moves out of the church and, in a sense, moves within each individual and the integrity of their response. And that's quite an interesting thought, that we've got to get away from a sanctuary notion in today's world, which is structured around buildings, and it's got to be structured into people.
Do you think the police would have acted differently if they had have acknowledged that this person was filled with the Holy Spirit, or that his body was the temple, this idea that God dwells within us?
If the police at least looked at this whole issue in terms of a faith-based thing, and if they said within themselves, well, yeah, he is here attending his dad's funeral, we'll let him do that, and then afterwards we'll capture him, great. If they thought of it like that, if they could simply say to themselves, what's he going to do at a funeral?
Father Rizzo, the underlining human right to seek sanctuary will continue for his community, and he personally will continue to believe that the church is a place of prayer and refuge for anyone who seeks it.
Police do have their job to do. I can understand that, and hopefully they just simply be out there for the common good and for the safety of the public. So I want to be a realist about this as well. You know, the fact that they do have a job to do and to arrest this individual. But again, there's a time and place for that as well. And the time and place was not the funeral and was not the sanctuary of a church.